Welcome to Ponchatoula Live. We're back after a summer break, and we're so happy to be here with you. This is a show where we help you connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. He holds one of the premier positions in our community, and that is head football coach at Ponchatoula High School. I am speaking, of course, about Tim Walters. Now, most folks know Coach Walters has been with the program for well over a decade, but just this last year, he was elevated to head coach. Coach, welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, thank you. Good. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Why don't we kick things off, Coach, with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I started coaching high school athletics. I played football in high school in the New Orleans area at Archbishop Shaw, and then you know, kind of felt like I wanted to give coaching a try. So got into coaching and started coaching in high school in 2002, and then did that in the New Orleans area until 2010. So for 9 years, and then in 2011, when Coach Hank Tierney became the head coach here, he hired me to be an assistant coach to coach the defensive backs. So I moved up here in 2011 and have been here ever since. So I was elevated to be the defensive coordinator in 2014 and have coordinated the defenses here ever since then. So, and then I coached track here. I was an assistant girls track coach for 3 seasons. And then, prior to me coming here, I coached, like I said, I coached in the New Orleans area at Fisher High School for 8 years, coached football, track, and wrestling. And then I coached at Destrehan for a year. I coached football and wrestling at Destrehan. So it's been so this is year 14 for me at Ponchatoula. So it's really become home to me at this point.
Yeah. Well, you've been here a while, and you have seen kind of the beginning and hopefully early part of the golden age of Ponchatoula football.
Right.
Y'all have been able to accomplish so much. Before we get into that, your actual years here, coaching on the gridiron in Ponchatoula, let's turn back because you mentioned playing in high school at Shaw.
Yeah.
Of course, you mentioned coming up with Coach Hank. Tell us about your childhood and kind of what it was like coming up in the city of New Orleans and in the Catholic School League and then playing at Shaw during those golden years under Coach Hank.
Right. So, I grew up in the 80s, actually on the West Bank of Jefferson Parish in New Orleans area. That was kind of like, you could leave home and go ride your bike. And, when the street lights came on, you went home and played, football in the street with your friends. And, so it was a great way to grow up. We didn't, this is before we had cell phones. We had our faces in all the time. So we went outside and, played with our friends. And, that was, I feel like I was fortunate to grow up in that era, more so than, some of the things that the kids are faced with now.
Right.
And then, for me, I'd always really wanted to play football. It was something that, I was always interested in football. And then, went to Shaw, and I had an older brother who played at Shaw. So I was kind of around there a lot. And then, when it was my time, to be in high school, I was able to go out for the team and make the team. And I was able to do that. So, and that was really a tremendous experience for me. I think
were you there during like any of the trips to the Dome, or was your brother there? What time were you playing at Shaw or watching Shaw?
So I was a player there from 1993 to 1996. So we didn't make the Superdome in any of those years. The year after 1997, that team did play for a state championship.
Okay.
But we were in the playoffs every year. I think in 96 it was the quarterfinals. And then I think my freshman year in '93, that would have been the quarterfinals as well. So, but Shaw was sort of accustomed to making deep playoff runs. So,
Yeah,
that was like,
that was the norm over there.
right. Yeah. I mean, that was just sort of expected,
Yeah. Well, when you talk about your growing up, a lot of it sounded like mine, playing football at the
Mhm.
park. I mean, I
Right.
remember well, my brother, our neighbor, Artie Thompson, our other neighbor, Mayor Wesley Daniels, would be out there at Memorial Park
Mhm.
practically every day, playing whatever sport
Right.
was in season. In football, Wesley would be the wide receiver. And then,
Mhm.
come summer, he
Yeah.
would, be the shortstop perhaps, but we would
Right.
all be out there outside all the time, like you said, till the sun went down.
Right.
But the difference being is that you, as a West Bank kid with Shaw, was used to seeing deep runs into the playoffs.
Mhm.
In
Right.
Ponchatoula, when I got to school around the same time as you, they made the playoffs in, I think 93, 94 for the first time since the 70s, and won
Right.
district for the first time since the 50s. So the football experience here was really different until
Mhm.
Coach Hank and you young guys like yourself and
Mhm.
Biamonte and all the guys he brought up got to town. So, what about the path in between? It sounded to me like you became a coach at a very young age. Is that right? Were you right out of college, or was there a
Right.
career
Yeah.
before coaching? How'd you become
No.
a coach?
No, that was what I did out of college. I sort of decided that while I was in school, and so once I was out of school and had an opportunity to start doing that, I did.
What inspired you to become a coach? You mentioned you made that decision in college. Was it
Mhm.
one event, or was it a culmination of having played all those years? What went into that?
No, it was really sort of I think I guess you would say a culmination of my experience coming up. I felt like I still wanted to be a part of high school football in some way, and I felt like that. I really wanted to give coaching a try, if anything else. And then I think my attitude at the time, you know, was, well, I'll give it a try, and then in a few years, if it's not for me, then I'll just find something else to do. Um, but it's all these years later, I'm still doing it. So
Here we are a few decades later,
yeah,
and you're still at it, and you're,
yeah.
a freshly minted head football coach. You mentioned a brother playing ball at Shaw ahead of
Mhm,
you.
mhm.
Were you the first coach in your family? Did you have uncles, dad, anybody else coaching, or were you kind of a trailblazer for the family?
Yeah, no coaches that I know of.
Okay.
I'm the only. Now, actually, my the older brother that I have that he actually does coach. He coached with us at Ponchatoula all the way up until the 2021 seasons. From 2011 to 21, he was one of the offensive line coaches alongside Coach Jim Gadarian. So and then now he still lives on the West Bank, and so now he's actually coaching at Shaw with Coach Tierney. So
Wow. So he's made it full circle.
yeah, but
Well,
I inspired him to coach. It wasn't the other way around, though.
although you sound like my brothers and me, there's a certain level of rivalry
Mhm.
that goes there throughout, in terms of making sure who did what first. Bree is quick to remind me that because when we were little, we played together. I remember
Mhm.
well being the quarterback of a little conference team, and Bree's my left tackle, and Wesley Daniels is. Believe it or not, they had him at tight end, not even at split end. Much
Mhm.
better receiver than blocker our mayor was. But a great crew. But Bree went on to be an excellent high school player, an all
Mhm.
district defensive end, and started on the offensive and defensive lines. I went
Right.
on to be the team stat guy, so it didn't happen for me. And I know brothers are quick to kind of remind one of another, how the pecking order works. Let's get into the early chapter of your career
Mhm.
before you came to PHS, before you
Mhm.
came, to work with Coach Hank. What did you learn in those early years doing something different? Once you get to Coach Hank, you're going to be back with your high school coach,
Mhm.
presumably a similar system to what you knew at Shaw. But
Right.
when you were coaching, you say Fisher High School and wherever you were, what did you learn from the great coaches that you worked with there?
Well, my experience, really, was so good there. And not only, with that school, but that whole community was just a great place to work. And uh, so I really, more so than anything, I really, was convinced that this was the career that I wanted to be in. And that was really because of those formative years there for me. It was such a great experience. I got a chance to do things that I hadn't done before. I coached track, because it's a small school and kind of everybody needs to pitch in and do everything. So, I got to learn a lot about track and field, and, got to coach wrestling. It's, hey, we need a wrestling coach. You know, so you'll be the assistant wrestling coach, and did that for a couple of years. And then, became the head wrestling coach, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, invested quite a bit of time and energy and effort and money trying to
Right.
be the best wrestling coach I could be, because, I wanted to give the kids the best that I could. And then, of course, being able to coach football there, and with that staff, we were fortunate to have uh, a coaching staff there that really worked well together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bunch of young guys. It was a bunch of younger guys, but everybody worked hard, and everybody got along well. And we had a lot of fun doing it down there. And it it's strange, being around football and playing football, and then but then when you start coaching football, it's like a whole nother level of understanding of the game that you need to have. It's sort of like, when you start coaching, you realize that there's all kinds of things you didn't even know that you don't know.
Right.
So there was some of
Yeah,
that.
those black swans out there that you don't even
Yeah,
know to ask about, right?
yeah. So that was a lot of that experience for me. Especially in those early years, was just how much it took. To coach, the time commitment, and the other things that you had to do to improve as a coach. There's no school for coaching necessarily. There's no undergraduate program in football coaching. It's sort of like, you learn as you go. You learn from different people. You travel. You talk to people. You get it from
Right.
wherever you can get it. And
Yeah, it's kind of more like an apprenticeship model where you have to look
right,
at the coach in front of you in line, see what they're doing, and
yeah,
you can draw from different sources. But you're right; it's not like, say, law school. For
right.
me, there's a specific school for 3 years that trains us to do
Mhm.
what we do. Y'all don't have that in the coaching
No,
field.
no, it's
Interesting.
so, and so having the ability to do that, especially at an early age, before I had family commitments that would made that harder. I was able to, if I wanted to go to watch spring practice at in Florida at a college, I could just do it. It wasn't no big deal.
Right.
If I wanted to spend another weekend, driving somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, I was single and didn't have kids at the time, so I had the
I,
time to do it.
I can relate. It's like being an attorney, trying cases and all the
Mhm.
late nights of prep and weekends that go into
Right,
that was a heck of a lot easier as a bachelor than it
right,
is
yeah,
as a dad. And right now I'm writing a new book. I'd written a book a few years ago,
hmm
this accident handbook. It's 300 pages, and I wrote that sucker lickety split because I had no kids. Now
hmm
I'm trying to write a new book about 18 wheelers, and man, every so often my kids are popping in, and
Oh
of
yeah,
course I'd rather be playing with them than
yeah,
writing that. So
yeah.
it's a different season of life. Talk to us, if you will, about that season of life for yourself. I mean, when did it come along, and what's the before and after look like that? I mean, with family, kids, how have you managed that? Because you've clearly excelled. Your best years on the gridiron happened. Hit trips to the dome and such
Right.
as defensive coordinator happened after that. That season for you, right? So what was that like? When did that come along, and how did you manage the
Right.
challenges of being
So,
a great coach and a great dad and husband and all
uh,
that?
well, So my first year at Ponchatoula, my wife and I were still living on the West Bank, and I was
Wow.
actually commuting. Where our plan was to move, but yeah, at that time the real estate was, market was kind of in bad shape, and it was gonna, you'd have to lose money to sell your house, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really a buyer's market. Um, so, but funny story, we found out that we were gonna have a child, and it ended up being twins.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
actually, they were born. It was week. So my daughters were born week 8. Um, It was early Saturday morning. After our week 8 football game. I can't recall offhand who we were playing, but it was a home game. I do remember that, because the way we did it at that time, we would play on Friday night, and then of
Mhm.
course, Friday night's a really late night, so you know, myself and actually my brother who was coaching too, we would actually spend Friday night at Coach Hank's house, because it was such, he was, no, he told us that's crazy to drive all the way back, to the West Bank, and then have to be back Saturday morning at 8 o'clock for coaches meetings, for game prep for the next week. So, he was kind enough to allow us to, to stay at his house, him and his
So
wife and
the
his
Shaw
family.
grad coaches got the bunk with Coach Hank. The
That's
rest
right.
of them
Yeah,
had to find a place to sleep.
that's right. That's right.
I love it, man. One of my dear friends, lifelong friends, Ben Parent, who coaches basketball
Mhm.
at Ponchatoula High, is real close with Coach Hank and lived out there. But I was going to say by Coach, but by y'all, I guess, if you were living there one night a week.
Mhm.
But he's always told me what a great guy, he is, and just that
Yeah.
family's just wonderful. His wife's a delightful lady. Just
Oh yeah.
neat to hear how close knit
Mhm.
y'all were and
Yeah.
are.
So, yeah, so gosh, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. We hadn't really been sleeping that long, and I got a phone call that I'm going to the hospital, and they were twins, so we thought we had a little bit more time, but that wasn't the case. And then so
So you
yeah,
had
that
to
was,
hightail it to the West Bank, so
yeah,
presumably she's delivering down there. Did
right,
you make
right.
it in time? Were you there
I
to see
did,
the
yeah,
baby?
I did.
Oh, great.
So
That's
yeah, it was that a little bit later on that Saturday. I'm not gonna say how fast I was going, but
yeah,
I
hey,
made it in
yeah.
record time.
I can tell you as your attorney, the statute of limitations is probably passed on that.
Yeah.
But that's a great story. Speaking of guys that know about having kids in sports, we've got Kevin Rayford here. Kevin and Karen
Mhm.
chiming in to say good luck, coach, and thank you for everything you do for the community.
Well, I
Kevin, I'd
appreciate
say the
that.
same to you, man. You serve our community so well. Both on the sidelines, coaching all those boys,
Mhm.
but especially as our assessor. But I want to mention now, Coach, if you don't mind, for our listeners that are
Mhm.
watching live on Facebook, as you can see from Kevin, we have the ability to publish your comment in real time. So if anybody's watching that has a question for the coach about the upcoming season, whatever, or if you just want to throw out some kind words as Kevin's done, feel free to post a comment, and I'll do my best to get it up here. We are here, of course, with Coach Tim Walters of the PHS football team, and he's telling us about how family comes into life. So these
Right.
these kids are born.
Mhm.
Clearly, that Saturday was not spent coaching.
Right.
Week 9 still coming.
Yeah.
So every new dad knows those early days of fatherhood are a fog
Mhm.
of war, right?
Yeah.
You remember very little, you sleep very little, probably. But as the kids grow, how long does it take you to get your full family up here near work, and how does that work once that happens?
Yeah. So we moved the year after in 2012. So that made my life a lot easier. And then at that point, I guess sort of everybody has to figure out that balance of you work and your family obligations, and I think it's just something you kind of have to figure out as you go. I think for me, one of the things that I used to do Um, like I would get home and I would constantly want to, work on something related to football. I would have these little whiteboards all over the place, and I would just pick them up and start drawing on them. And but as I've gotten older, I stopped doing that.
Right.
Because I felt like you know you need to kind of have boundaries in your life. Like if you're home, then you need to be
Mhm.
home, and you need to
Yeah.
be
You want to be
you need to,
present in your kids'
right.
lives. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes great sense.
Yeah.
Well,
So, I think that was really, for me, and as silly as that sounds, that was probably, one of the biggest steps for me is that,
mhm.
when you get here, you have to leave, you have to leave that stuff behind, and
Yeah,
you need to be here, you know.
it's so tough sometimes to focus and
Mm,
compartmentalize
right.
like you should, and I think that's a big yeah, it's where the rubber meets the road
Yeah.
as professionals. For those
Yeah.
of us, I may be having a bad day at the
Mhm.
house for whatever reason,
Right.
but when I step in court for my clients, I need to perform in a certain way. And the same
Yeah.
thing for you. I mean, when the bright Friday lights hit, you got to be calling the right coverages and plays and doing all that goes into coaching.
Yeah.
So let's now move forward to, coaching in Ponchatoula. You talked
Mhm.
about kind of how you got here. You come up with Coach Hank. You got your brother. At this point now, wife and
Yeah.
twins are
Yeah.
there. And then you guys would, turn this program around from being one that's known as a big school without much talent,
Mhm.
a team that's like, frankly, lightly regarded. I mean, Ponchatoula sits in a parish with some traditional football powerhouses,
Right.
Kentwood, Amite, these guys, Titletown, USA, even
Mhm.
Independence has made deep runs and put out some major league talent. Ponchatoula wasn't really known for that,
Mhm.
but you guys turned it around and eventually, we head to the dome. So how did that come about? I mean, tell us about that journey to bring this school from where it was before y'all got here to what it became.
So I think really that started, under Coach Biamani when he got here. Um, the first thing really that you have to do is you have to outside of establishing the way that you want things done and the way you want the program to operate, um, and trying to get the right people in place is you have to establish the right kind of culture. And and that's sort of like a an ambiguous term. What does that mean? But that really is one of the most important things that you have to do. And that relates to everything uh that you do in your program. And from how the players uh act in the class to how they work in the weight room, on the practice field. um and then beyond that, you know Coach Baimani, and then of course with Coach Hank when he took over. That's a system, I guess you would say, or a way of doing things that really has withstood the test of time. um you know Everything from how practice is organized, how the off-season programs organized, how do we coach players, how do we talk to players, how do we deal with the players, how do we you know how do we project guys and where they're going to fit in on our team. And then of course you know the schematics and how we come about that. How do we prepare for a game, how do we practice. And I think a lot of those things were radically different. I think there was, in the early days, I think there was some culture shock. but
I bet.
once it's sort of like, once people start to understand and see a little bit of results and a little bit of success, then they start to, people start to buy in. And I think
Right.
that's sort of what happened with us. When I got there in 2011, Coach Hank had been there. He was actually the offensive coordinator. Um, and so although it was, mostly a new staff in 2011, Coach Hank was the head coach. All the players were already familiar with Coach Hank. He had been there for 3
Wow.
years
Yeah.
with Coach Baimani. And so it wasn't like, things are totally changing.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, okay, we know what to expect now because, this is the system that we've operated under. And, so that team in 2011, had some expectations of being pretty good. Had a good season in 2010, and we're, sort of looking to build on that now. We did have some turnover in the coaching staff, but we had a good core group of players, and we were excited about the season. So, I think that really things really started to change, in those early years with Coach Baimani, and then of course when Coach Hank got there, and first as the offensive coordinator, and then taking over as head coach.
So you talked a little bit about the internal change of how
Mhm.
people bought in, and the success begot more success, and
Right.
y'all kind of built it. When did you notice the outside world kind of take a note that this is a new Ponchatoula football program? I mean, did y'all get feedback from your colleagues, or whispers from, what did it seem like out there in the greater football community? Was it something that people caught on to pretty quickly because Coach Hank was so high profile, or did it take a while for people to realize that y'all were there to play serious in a way we had not done before?
Well, I think a couple things. I think in 2013, we were kind of a young team, but really talented. And, we were sort of starting to expect to win and be, and have a chance to compete for a district championship year in and year out at that point. But 2013 was really the first year where we really felt like we had a team that was good enough to compete with anybody. And we played Mandeville at home that year in 2013 in a really, really close game. Mandeville, of course, had a really, really good team that year. And the game, came right down to the end. I think it was like a 4th and short that, we ended up not converting, and they ran the clock out. But their coach at the time told his players after the game that they will never be the Ponchatoula of old.
Really?
And I think that's when people started to take note. Like, this is not, something, something's going on here. Things are changing. This
Yeah.
is a team that can compete with with anybody around. So that, and then of course, as we started having more success, then the people around town would make comments and say, oh, we saw the Ponchatoula helmet was on the desk on Friday Night Football, and things like that, but yeah, of course, having somebody as well known in the high school football community as Coach Hank
Mhm.
helped. But of course, you have to have the success to.
Got to have the wins, right? I mean, he does not Coach Hank with that big reputation without hundreds of wins behind him, and
Right.
it's great that y'all were able to do that here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the playing to the dome, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that was something that just caught fire in this town, and everybody was so excited. I remember taking my kids as little bitty boys up there, and they didn't understand football at all yet, really. And
Mhm.
but they loved being in the dome, and they could feel the electricity
Yeah.
in the event of it. What's it like coaching a team that makes a historic run like that? Because y'all had some really good teams before
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
didn't make it.
Right.
That a few breaks here or there probably
Mhm.
could have.
Yeah.
But what was that journey like? And with people that you had coached with a long time, people. Coach
Right.
Hank and your brother, you'd been with your entire football career. I shouldn't say, from back to the beginning of your football career, to people like Coach Trey Willie and others that
Right.
that had been here a while. Like, what was that journey like for you and your colleagues on the coaching staff and on all of the team?
Yeah. At that point, we really had a lot of continuity in our coaching staff. It was really there wasn't any new coaches coming in. It was all the same guys that had been together for a long time. And even
Yeah, y'all had kind of a band of brothers. I mean, you had
yeah,
been DC for a while. Willie had an offense for a while. I mean, y'all had,
right.
really well-defined roles, as I recall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And all the other coaches, Coach King has been with us. You know, it came with us in 2012. And of course, Ben Ernst, I think, was 2014. So all
Mhm.
those guys had, we had spent so much time together. It's sort of like, the coaches are part of the team as well. I mean,
Right.
just because you work so closely together and you spend so much time together, you become quite close to each other. And to have that opportunity to coach a team that was that good and that talented, and have that kind of success was just something that you look forward to, I think, and hope that it happens at some point in your career. And then being able to win all those games, and then of course, given the circumstances of that season with the storm and school being closed, and us losing a couple games, and then we were kind of back and forth on when we were going to be able to go back, and so it really made it
It was a
special.
wild ride.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It certainly was. We were, gosh, we evacuated. We were in Arkansas, and we're kind of like, well, I don't know when we're going to be able to play.
Yeah.
So I certainly remember that experience. Through Hurricane Katrina. You know, being from the New Orleans area, and how that affected us, and
Right.
how we just didn't. We were evacuated, and then it was quite a long time, and we didn't know what was going to happen, when we were going to be able to go back, and what we were going back to, and
Yeah.
what would that was going to look like. And so fortunately we were able to get back, and it didn't have nearly the impact on the season as it could
That you
have. But
figured. Yeah.
yeah,
That
but
makes sense. I remember well calling. We were in South Carolina, and calling my brother Bree, and he's just like, "Don't come back, man. It's not
yeah,
time yet. I'll
right,
check out your house, but you can do no good here for a little while." And
yeah,
yeah, it was really it helped our town kind of
right,
celebrate and get over a really tragic year in so many ways. So
yeah,
it was really cool. Talk to us now about where you guys are. We've talked a lot about where you've come from. You are now, after many
mhm.
years as an assistant, stepping up as a head coach for the first year. What are your thoughts on the program, on where it is and where you're going to take it?
Well, I think we're in a good position now. I think um, we're pretty established with the coaching staff that we need to have. And so from that 2021 season, that basically that entire coaching, it wasn't just uh, Coach Hank. It was almost everyone. Uh, you know, is not coaching on the varsity level anymore. Just a couple guys. In fact, I think it's just two now. Um, so not only was it, of course, you lost a sort of a generational, team, and as far as the players, but there was just a tremendous amount of turnover in the coaching staff as well. Um, I think that we're in a position now where we've kind of stabilized that. We have guys that are enthusiastic about being at Ponchatoula, and we're going to put some time in. And then as far as our program, I think we're in good standing. We're trying to do things the way that we've always done it. Like I said, the guys who were fortunate enough to coach under Coach Tierney, kind of learn a way. You kind of learn a way to do things, and
Yeah, like a proven system, or as
right.
Saban would call it, a process, right?
That's right. That's right. And so we try to apply that. We try to do it. It looks awfully similar, I think, in a lot of ways, to what it was there. So, but, and then outside of that, I mean, everybody's different, you have to be yourself. Um, so, that's what we're trying to do. And, the players that we have on the team, we have a big senior class this year, so that's good. We have 32 seniors, I believe, right now. So that's a positive thing. It's always good to have a big senior class. And, so all the kids are really working hard, and we're excited about the season. So I think we're in a good position. I think we're in a good position to provide the stability that I think that the program needs.
When you talk to your leaders, your seniors or your captains, or what do you tell them, and what are you trying to infuse in your team? What's the messaging that goes from you and your coaching staff to your leaders that you want to see disseminate throughout your whole team? What are the core values, I guess, is what I'm asking, that you guys play by and live by?
Right. So one of the first things that we talk to the players about is really what it means to be a part of a team. And that by virtue of being on a team, you are sacrificing, some of your own personal wants or desires for the benefit of the team. So, that's really one of the big things that I think people have to understand in our program, and we try to get our players to understand, is that, we sort of have a saying. We tell them that, you have to be out of yourself and into the team. And, so that's really kind of where it starts. And then, outside of that, we talk about, that you really can't focus so much on the outcome that you might want. You need to focus more on, the things that you're putting into it, the things that you can control,
right.
Your effort, your attitude, all those things that you actually do have control over, those are the things that you need to worry about. It's like, you go out on a Monday and, you try to tell guys, you don't need to be worrying about, are we going to win Friday? You need to worry about, how am I going to practice today?
Yeah.
So, that's really, the things that we want our older guys to, first to emulate,
Right.
And serve as that example, that positive example for the younger kids, because, really the culture, when you establish it, has to flow through the players. And it's sort of like, it's those older guys and the team captains. It's their responsibility to make that work. They're sort of the bridge between the coaching staff and the rest of the players.
Right.
So it's important that the older guys set the right kind of example.
Yeah, and the other guys will follow suit.
Right.
If you could say, go back in time to when you were a young coach just getting started, what advice would you give yourself? I mean, you've now been doing this well over 2 decades. You've had tremendous success. You've coached with some of the best, period, from famous coaches like Coach Hank to some incredible assistant coaches that have been by your side. I'm sure you've learned a ton of lessons, and I'm not asking you to list them all here, but what pops in your head first when you think about, man, if I could go back in time, talk to myself or talk to a young coach now, what advice would you give yourself as that young coach eager to be great at what you do?
Yeah. I think that really the thing that I wish I learned sooner, rather than later, was that you can't blame yourself, I guess, so much for, the outcome of things, that really what you control is very limited to your own individual inputs. And that there's some things you sort of have to let go. And I had a hard time with that as a young coach. I kind of, I guess, maybe felt like if, I I worked hard enough, or coached hard enough, or whatever, that I would be, would maybe be a little more guaranteed success, I guess, or whatever you want to say. But that's really not. I think I've learned that's the wrong way to look at it.
Right. You
And
learn more
so,
what you mentioned telling the players to do, which is
right,
focus on the things you can control.
right,
Maybe the winning takes care of itself, but at the end of
that's
the
right,
day, as a singular coach, you can't control the outcome of
right.
the game, right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, because it's hard. I would spend some time, beating myself up over things that really, which as I look back on it now, were quite silly. And so I wish I could have learned that lesson a little bit sooner. That look, it's you need to lighten up a little bit, and you're gonna work hard and do everything you can, um, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to let things go too. So and I think that the other thing too is that I think just by the nature of coaching, you tend to remember the disappointing things more than the good things. And I think everybody
I think a lot of
right,
professions are like that. I remember my losses
yeah,
way more than my wins.
right, and so I kind of wish it wasn't like that, but I guess that's just the way it is. I think but I think that as you get a little older and you've been around a little more, I think you have a little enough maturity to understand that you know again, you there are a lot of other factors that go into the end result that you don't have any control over.
All right. Well, Coach, I thank you. We've
Sure.
spent more time here than I think we expected. I want to get you back to the rest of your
Yeah.
day. But before we go, I
Mhm.
want to ask you, how can we help you? And, us as a community, what can we do to support PHS football? What would be the things that you would most want to see out of folks like me out in the community?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is come to the games and cheer for us, and and which we've had tremendous support here, so that's never been an issue. Um, and then beyond that, we're gonna have some events. I know we do some through our booster club, we do some events. We do the gumbo cook off. We're gonna try to get some other events going on, so and push that out there. So just kind of be looking out for that, and that's another way that you can support us as well.
Well, thank you for all you do for our community, for our school.
Sure.
Before we close, is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers?
Well, no, outside of like I said, this is year 14 for me. So Ponchatoula, the community in Ponchatoula High School really has become home to me, and and I don't think just by the nature of my personality, maybe a lot of people maybe don't know me, even though I've been here quite a while. Because I sort of am not really an attention seeking person. So, it's kind of not my deal. So, but everybody has been so great and so supportive, so I really do appreciate the people here and this community, and how supportive they are of not only myself, but our school and our student athletes as well.
Well, you certainly earned the job. I mean, the defenses you've coached over the years have been tremendous, and we can read this whether it's on Go Preps or wherever. Like, coaches just speak so highly of you. Your colleagues respect you, and I'm really excited to see what's in store for PHS football. So, thank you for sharing your time with me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it double, knowing that you are a quiet and private person. To come on the show for 45 minutes and bare your soul is no small task for anyone, but I appreciate you. So Thank you, Coach. I really appreciate your time. To our viewers, our listeners, thanks for sticking with us. I would make a small request to you out there. If you have not yet subscribed to the show, please do so. You can do that by getting on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever you consume podcasts, or following our Facebook page, things like that. but we would sure appreciate that. So to our viewers, our listeners, and Coach Walters, we say thank you, and we'll see you next week. Y'all take care.